Well, happy holidays, everyone, from my sparkling new location because I'm having to move around. Hey, Tom, we're getting ready for the
Hey,
holidays. Our whole new MonoGame Christmas special.
the Christmas special. I don't know if it's that exactly, but yeah,
Well,
holidays are happening.
there's a little bit. I mean, there's the Star Wars Christmas special, which is Disney has tried to bury, but hopefully we won't be there.
Yeah, we're not quite to that level.
All right, so welcome everyone. It's MonoGame Open Hours. We're back again for another month, 1 week after our board meeting. And obviously, this is our last session of the year, and you might notice a slight decoration in the slides here. So we're getting ready for the holidays. We've got lots of prizes, small giveaway to everyone who's supporting MonoGame and helping us to make MonoGame the best it can be. But let's kick into it and just get started. So. First off, we can have some news about 3.8.5. Yes, we've been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. I mean, we're working extremely hard behind the scenes. I mean, Tom, you've been coding away like a maniac every Friday, trying to get those last big chunks of 3.8.5 out.
Yep. Yeah, Vulkan has been a little bit of a pain trying to get that finished out, and it's in pretty good shape right now. I think there's still some bugs, but we really need people to kind of take a look at it and see what they run into. And the other thing we did these last 2 weeks was get the F audio implementation done so that Vulkan has an appropriate cross desktop Mac, Linux, and Windows audio implementation. So that's in there as well. So things are looking good in that regard.
Yep, and I suppose there's a nice little preview note to that, because for those who are here, is that we intend to release 3.8.5, at least the very first proper preview release of 3.8.5 today. We're just checking over the last things, make sure all the automation builds work, and then that release will be out. And then hopefully before the end of the year, with fingers crossed, but there's no major bugs or things that get raised, then hopefully for a nice little holiday present, the 3.8.5 release will actually be out there for everyone to use and start playing with. So that's everything from all the maintenance releases and fixes that have been built up from 3.8.4 to 3.8.5. There's been some iOS and Google policy update fixes and things like that. There's been a lot of tweaks and improvements there, but also the big ticket item for 3.8.5 are the previews for the Vulkan platform, for DirectX 12, and also the new content builder system, which has its own templates. And it's also got two mimicked cross-platform templates. So like we've got with the Start Kit with a blank and a full project release, the same thing is there for the content builder. And there's even now an automation pack for the content builder, so you can offload your building to a back-end agent that's running on Windows, Mac, or Linux, and have automation build your content for you, or even your entire project. We're trying to put as much into the release as possible. Ultimately, and we can't stress this enough, because we want you to test it. We need more real-world testing on this stuff we're building. Throw your projects into it, tell us the issues, give us feedback, and then all of that will go into the 3.8.6 release. We've already got a bunch of big-time fixes already waiting for this, but we want to make sure that this release was as solid as possible. Oh, excuse me, as solid as possible, unlike my voice. And we just need more projects and testing. There will be a sort of a known issues list, which we're just finalizing compilation of. There's a few little things which we've noticed, but really struggle to replicate. But so we need more hardware, more projects, more testing to ensure that everything is as steady as it can be. Now, right off the back of this is that we're also now launching our sponsors private area. So for those who donate and support and help MonoGame in all of our developments and our projects, this is another big gift back to you. It's got a bunch of features in there. There's all dedicated documentation, and also you get previews to all the latest and greatest, both from the samples perspectives, all the information stored in there, and also the new age bounty tutorials in there, which more on that in a minute, because we are launching the 2D shaded tutorial straight into the preview site. So all of our sponsors now will have access to that, and most of you actually already have access if you've been following the chat on the channels. But as to note to everyone else, if you want to get early access to the schedule tutorial, then all we ask at this point in time is to help us out. But the full release of this is that in several months, this will still become public, and everyone then, without any kind of support to MonoGame, can still access the content. We're only holding these things back in preview to give benefit to those who are helping MonoGame launch forward and get things as moving as fast as possible. And as I sort of hinted at, there's even a special gift again for sponsors, but we've built something out there. And today we're also going to be joined by a avid developer who's called Chris Hanna, who actually wrote the 2D shader tutorial. So everyone here is going to get a full taste of what's in there, the kind of knowledge that's imparted. And I will stress this thing goes into a lot of detail. If you are nervous about shaders and how they work and want to work out how to actually manipulate things in a certain way, not just effects, but this is also doing transformations and altering stuff like that. I've been showing previews about this for a few months now, but it's actually here. So as we move on, so our streaming schedule is filling up now. So we're adding, to those who have noticed, a new show, which will be starting in the new year towards the latter end of January. We've got the open hours, which is now every third Wednesday of the month. Code time every Friday with Tom feverishly away cooking through code, which the one thing I really love about this is not just seeing Tom's mind think and swear and curse at the screen, but also it's a case of you get to see the things that we deal with almost every day when we're working with cross-platform projects, whether it's working on MonoGame, how we translate those features for other games, whether they're being ported to consoles or to other platforms, and all those little gotchas which you don't find out until someone expensive comes along and tells you you've done this wrong all your life, but you need to change it this way for it to actually work on certain platforms. It's a real eye-opener. The MonoGame University is continuing on with the 2D tutorial every Thursday. We're going through the tutorial, getting more feedback. I kind of make Chris, the original author of the tutorial, cry at times because I just want to do things differently. And don't load XML at runtime. We want to build a content pipeline processor to do it for you and test early and other such things, and making myself life difficult when I get to the next section. But also, the newest show, as we displayed, is that the MonoGame Spotlight. This is going to be a highlight show where we bring on you, the community, the content creators, the game developers. If you've got a game to shout about, if you've got an actual project that you're working on, or if you're managing an asset and you want to tell everyone about it and show the great latest and greatest. So a short show should be about 30 or so minutes. We'll get on, have a good chat about it, and get the word out there. This also may be especially useful if you're building a game with MonoGame and want some more attention. We're here to use our channel to spread the word out about why should people be playing your game, because it's built with MonoGame, so it's already awesome. So yeah, getting on. So as we've highlighted, the university, which will go through the 2D tutorial series. Once that's wrapped up, we will then drift into the 2D shaders. We have some other tutorials which are coming, which sponsors will get early access to, and then off. And then on Fridays, we've discussed Tom's there fixing issues, doing PRs, and working on forward. We've got some chat there, Tom, if you want to catch it up.
I'm working on that. Don't worry about that.
I'm good. All right, we like things. So one of the biggest news, we've hinted this for several months now, but our private sponsors area is now live. So everyone there who's a Sprite batch level and above will get instant access to the site. There's documentation, there's chat, there are samples, and Chris is going to show he really has amazed me, even just from the starting page, and you'll see this, the advanced 2D shaders tutorial, which is many chapters with different effects, hot reload system, lots of others. We're going to be ramping up more content that we're giving early access to sponsors with the full intention, yes, it will still get to everyone in public in the real time, because we don't want to gate knowledge or information. We want everyone to get the best out of MonoGame for building their projects and shipping them out there and getting the help they can, because MonoGame has one of the most open and really chatty communities I've ever been a part of. Everyone's out there to help each other, and MonoGame Foundation is there to help you. And granted, we can only do this as fast as we can thanks to the sponsors, so we have to give back to them first. So we'll showcase that later. And obviously, as we said, the 2D Shader tutorial is launching, which we've got a nice long presentation. I've just had the notice that our our author has actually jumped into the room now. He nearly didn't make it, but he's moved hell and high water to be here. And you're going to see firsthand everything that's going to be shown here. We're probably going to break up some of this content, do it as short and getting things out there. But ultimately, we want to make a big deal of this because it is such a huge resource. Off the back of that, then, we have 2 other tutorials which are currently in the works. We have all the content to code. They're just going through our review process, which to those authors who've been through my review process will know I am no spring chicken. There have been expletives used for how I review code, but it goes. The first one is the mobile deployment phase. So if you ever want to know all the ins and outs of how to take your project and then ship it on mobile, this walks through how you handle the different resolutions, how you use packaging, how you do input, how you work with the different stores. A lot of key information in there to try and ensure that you have the best experience when you're taking your project to mobile, or if you're building for mobile first, what are the gotchas you need to watch out for, especially if you, like most people, want to deploy to both stores at the same time. Saves them some hassle. This is the tutorial for you. And obviously the other big ask which has been demanded from us for some time, if you look at the 3D showcase on the Discord, there are loads of titles out there all in 3D. MonoGame itself is 3D by default. 2D is just flat 3D. So 2D is just 2D is just 3D but in one plane and flat, that's flat on the screen, even though people do parallax of X. I'll lose my mind there. But the 3D tutorial goes through all the things you need to know about actually then transition from the whole 2D flat world into the 3D world. And we have sort of a little video which demonstrates this. Apologies to it. In this game, it's got everything from a conversational system, obviously a ship navigating and flying through space, and as you can see, shooting lots of green stuff out there, and then not just enemies appear on the screen, but also like waves and transitions and collisions and all the little tricks you need to know for building a 3D game, but in a small condensed format. Here we are, we're getting the power-ups and I'm shooting it too. So it's as full of a game as you can make from a basic sense, but obviously it's from those who are new to 3D and moving up. And no doubt later on, like we did with the tutorial, we'll then focus on more effects and add-ons and things you can do to this to make it even more of a game. Now, so Tom?
It looks good.
Okay, so the other big news we've got is obviously that, especially for the holidays, we got this new free gift, and this is sort of this was surprised even us when it got announced. One of the main team members actually decided to just put this together. So, for those that know, we've been working with Kenny to upgrade and migrate their samples over to MonoGame. We've got the 3D platform, which we'll talk about shortly, and we've also got their FPS template, and we'll continue on. But obviously, Kenny provides a load of assets and content. I mean, it's amazing just how much he provides, and all of that is easily usable and consumable within the MonoGame project. And so this is a tidy little package. It's not a full game. It is simply a little diorama of a snowy scene, but obviously, being the MonoGame Foundation, we don't just settle for throwing models on a screen. There is whole snowfalls coming down here, and we can show the video of this as well. That there is snowfall, and the snow accumulates and builds up. There are animations built in for these models, and this sample also comes with a load of documentation to say how it's all built and put together. We're also adding additional content. People keep asking about how to use Blender with MonoGame, so this walks through how to get the models imported, how to build them in a scene and export them, so it's in there. Look at this. Poor Rudolph is now getting buried in snow. The snowmen are happy, but there they go. I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Tom? Because it still marvels me just how small and simple this project is, but the amount of power and things we've thrown into it to really make it shine.
Yeah, I mean, and I know that Dean pulled this together pretty quickly. It's just a last minute kind of like, this is a neat little thing to make. It's almost like a little snow globe kind of, app, essentially. And yeah, I think there's definitely things in there that people can learn from. Very simple approach to building a scene. Some of the effect stuff that's happening in there is interesting for people to look at. I think it's a neat little scene for people to check out and learn from.
Yep, and again, like anything else, I mean, this has been given freely to sponsors as sort of a big thank you. We're looking at options to also put on itch.io so people can donate to then get the sample and get all the content behind it, just for the holidays, and then probably later in the year we'll probably release it for free again, because keeping our promise that MonoGame is there to help everyone do everything. If you support MonoGame, then you get things quicker and sooner. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
Obviously, the other sample that we're still working on now, when 385 releases, the 3D platform will release to the public in full. This has been in as part of the preview to our sponsors for many months now. We've been tweaking, changing it. We've shown some good videos and content about what this is doing. And this is a complete game. So this goes for everything from the menu screens, the gameplay, to all the different effects, lots of different funky things, like squishing the character and making sure that all of that works as expected. So expect to see that once 385 releases, and it's going to be good. That's all we can say about that.
Yep.
So without further ado, I think I don't think we've got any big chat things coming up or any other questions.
No.
Dean's jumped in the chat. So without further ado, we can introduce our guest speaker today, who's done tremendous work for us, and also sorry, Chris, I'm going to name and shame you on this, because he did this almost for free, because all of the donations that the bounties we have are given money to actually build these tutorials, but Chris has donated this to charity. Maybe you can talk about that as well, Chris, about, I suppose, the reason behind the whole donation and just sort of your passion for building projects for MonoGame. So welcome on board.
Hello. Am I coming through okay?
Yep. Oh yeah, we can hear and see you now as well.
All right. Hello, everybody. Yeah, MonoGame is fantastic. It's meant a lot to me over my life. So getting the paid bounty opportunity is fantastic for me. I love the ability to connect with the MonoGame folks, and then forwarding the money along to those who need it, I think is just a great opportunity to be able to do. It went to a food bank, so especially around the holidays, really nice to be able to do that. So
right,
I appreciate it.
In which case, Chris, I shall hand over to you now. So we'll go over to your presentation.
Right. Cool.
You might want to kick it off because we can see your slide deck right now.
All right. I'm on my laptop, so I've only got the one monitor, so I'm juggling. But here we go. It should now be in full screen.
Yes. Okay, we shall hide away, and Chris, the floor is yours.
All right. So thanks for the quick introduction there. My name is Chris Hanna. I've got this little nosefish icon on Discord, so that's me. And I'm here to talk about 2D shaders, a little bit about me super fast. On the right side of the screen is my career trajectory, which is mostly focused around C#, .NET development stuff. Most recently working at a game services company called Beamable. On the left, though, are a bunch of screen grabs from side projects I've worked on over the years. I've released a few games. I've done a bunch of Unity asset store stuff. Nothing super successful, but it's in there. And the most recent project is making a scripting language that sits inside of .NET and is debuggable, which is called Fade Basic. And I'm currently using that project actually with MonoGame to make this little fish project on the right. And I've been using XNA or MonoGame, like I said, pretty much since I was a kid and started to explore programming. I even did my college thesis project in MonoGame. So I've been around, sort of a lurker on the community side, but here I am. So I wanted to give you guys a sense of what to expect for the next 25 minutes-ish, might be a little shorter, of your life. Well, there's essentially 4 things. I want to talk about the 2D shader tutorials philosophy and structure, sort of why it's written the way that it is, and what you can expect from it. And then I took 2 excerpts from the tutorial and adapted them to this presentation so we can go through them together. You can kind of get a sense of what it might be like if you were to read the tutorial. And finally, there's a few things to talk about at the very end. So that's what you have to look forward to. So get cozy. By the way, like Simon mentioned, the tutorial is available at this very moment. So you could go to sponsors.monogame.net and you would see something like this. And that's very exciting. And if you're not a sponsor, you will get a login screen. So you can go become a sponsor and then you'll be able to get access to it. So why make a shader tutorial at all? Well, shaders can be a bit confusing, but really, yeah, they can be. And especially when you're in a scenario like XNA where there are technical constraints that have stayed with the platform for a long time. And I think shaders can be confusing, especially when you are new to shaders in general. There's just a lot to learn. There's a lot of lingo and verbiage and just like little tricks to have in the back of your head, which can make learning things hard. And they can be confusing, especially when you don't have a super good development environment that's holding your hand and helping you make decisions about the shaders. So MonoGame has a great shader platform, but it doesn't really have an opinionated way that you work with those shaders. And I think that's kind of MonoGame's MO. It gives a lot of responsibility to the developer, which is one of the things that makes MonoGame great. You can do so many unique things with it. And the same philosophy is with the shaders as well. There's a lot for you to manage there. And if you are new to shaders, that can be tricky. So if you already know it, fantastic. If you don't know it, then trying to learn them from scratch in the MonoGame ecosystem is kind of like learning shaders with a bit of a hard mode on. So having this tutorial, I wanted to take it from a place of like, let's just walk through the very beginnings of writing stuff. So yeah, the goal here is to help you build intuition around what shaders do, making small little incremental changes, seeing how that changes the effect on the screen, and also the development practices, the workflow for creating effective shaders.
Oh, and as the image will have it, looks like we just lost Chris. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Oh, the joys of the internet.
Yep, it happens.
Yep. Let's go over here until we see him again.
Sure. He's right now panicking, freaking out over the fact that he's not. He dropped off. Hopefully,
worse, it'd be like Chris. We're like when Aristotle Chris was talking, and he didn't realize he was just talking away, not really noticing he hadn't been there.
Yeah. But yeah, it happens. Oh, and by the way, follow us on Twitch, on YouTube. We're trying to get our Twitch numbers up. Like the Twitch, it was so far we've only been experimenting with Twitch for a couple months now, and we're still very low on followers there, and we don't get a lot of viewers live. We need to probably experiment a little bit more with, streaming more on Twitch in order to get some more viewers there. In order to get to sponsored tiers and things like that, we have to have some more viewers.
I think the trick with that is something I don't think we've had time to do, which maybe we can invest in the new year, is you need almost like daily or regular streams.
Right. See, we have a post. Tom, incredible shirt as always. Thank you. I've had this one for a little while. I can't say it's original. It's aftermarket. And for sure, sponsor MonoGame. That's where we are taking sponsorships. I'm hoping that we'll be pushing more. We probably should have some more news on sponsors by the next open hours. So, but yes, individual sponsors are the best. We're trying to get to kind of grow the community. I think that we're going to see a pretty big, influx of developers once we publish the 3D platformer sample or starter kit. I think it's going to help a lot of people kind of that want to dive more into 3D and are not as interested in 2D, which there's a lot of people that are that way. Dive into MonoGame is something that they can start out with, just having a good starter kit that lets people begin with that. So we've been pushing hard to try to get that platformer sample out there. All right. So I guess, do we have a fallback plan if Chris is completely
one thing I can do. Let's see if I try now. This can be tricky because, like Chris, I'm on a single screen.
Right.
I can probably share the actual private documentation up. So
yeah,
here you can see. I mean, Chris really went to. Well, actually, first I should ask: can you actually see that screen?
Yes.
I'm just doing it. So pretty much like the standard MonoGame documentation hub, this has been designed so that it very much mimics that, mainly so that when we actually go to take content from private to public, it's going to be a simple case of this just a PR, move the content over, just all the images and the content, and it's as quick and easy to maintain for us. But also you'll see like this is the direction we're going. We're trying to make things more arguably flashy. There's all different content in here.
Streamlined, automate.
Yep, we got all the new samples, all the starter kits and all the samples in there.
Simon, real quick, maybe go to Discord and message Chris.
Yeah.
Make sure that he's aware that he's not on. I don't know if he's still. In my mind, I keep thinking he's sitting there talking to the screen and he's not aware.
Yep. I've pinged him there privately, but he may still be talking away.
Either that or he's offline. So, but it's okay. We'll continue on.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. So as you can see, also the 2D shading, and like the beginner 2D, it's the same kind of layout and all talking about all the content. You can see we've got like 9 chapters of actual. I mean, by the end of this, I mean the first few chapters are fairly easy to go through, and you'll get through in about an hour or 2 hours or so. But then when you get down to here, when we start talking about lighting and all the different ways you can have lighting effects in here and just different shader approaches to it. And then when you start to work into the math of what is the shadows, which I think is one of the things Chris wants to talk about, getting shadows to work right, even whether it's 2D or 3D, is a tremendous amount of math to actually get right, and understanding how light impacts or works is always critical. Actually, I will check it now. I'm getting a spam call, so I can't look at my phone to see where Chris is. And we're going a lot of different things, from anything from just simple color swapping, where we're taking the 2D rendered output and we're just applying almost a color mask to the effect. Right. And now this goes beyond what you would do with a sprite batch, where you're simply tinting individual elements. You're working with the entire screen and working with how all those different things work on that effect. And then obviously one of the funkier things is actually then taking 2D and making it 3D. And MonoGame doesn't provide this native gather HUD, but what this tutorial shows you, that there's nothing stopping you actually doing that and getting on. So that's all there. In here, then the rest of the site is pretty much exactly the same as the others. But over time, we intend to just keep adding more and more content to this.
It's kind of like it's a staging area where we first put new content as we're building it. Because a lot of the stuff that we're providing to sponsors are things that are still in development, and they're kind of the first line that get to check it out and also give us feedback. So this is kind of like the staging area where we're getting everything ready, and then once it's ready and we feel like it's in good shape, then we'll move that stuff to the public side and start on something new in the private side, and that lets us get give something back to sponsors, get their feedback. They have direct influence on what we're building, for sponsors. And then once it's made public, then everybody gets to enjoy that content, and we start again with something new. So this is what we're currently working on. What's in the works, I guess, next for the tutorials and stuff. So
in here, also they're listed already. We got the mobile deployment series. That's not a separate. I mean, the content is there in the site. It's even hidden behind sponsors, because we've got to go through our own internal review processes and checking everything to make sure the language is right, make sure the tutorial is right, and make sure that at least we can understand it. And I suppose you can just probably stop the. Can you stop the screen sharing from there, Tom?
Can I stop it from here?
We might as well go over to the QA and it's basically put out to the audience to see what burning questions they have around all the developments and what's going on.
Right. I can't stop your screen share, I don't think.
Yep. If you go into the content side, you can turn off the feed for that.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Or just change the scene.
There you go. It's off.
Okay. Good. Yeah.
All right.
So hopefully Chris is going to pick up his notes, or else it's going to be we're going to have a very short open hours this month.
Nah,
which is a real shame because yeah. So I mean, this is it now. This is where we're giving the highlights of what's coming now, everything that's coming up.
Right.
So if you've got questions or queries about what's going on there, then fire them over and then.
Right. Well, here's one. Where can the Xmas scene be accessed? I don't see it on the new sponsor site.
Oh, cold out! It's almost ready. We're getting all the final adjustments in there, as well as agreeing sort of how we're going to give it straight out. So yes,
Right.
there'll be a download on the sponsor site, and also I think we're talking about also having it published on Itch.io, and having another way so that non-sponsors can still access. So if you choose to sponsor, you'll get instant access. And maybe having a one-time donation fee to then get access to the content, so as a thank you.
Right.
But that is ultimately our aim. So, and again, this is only gated for a period of time, and then it will just be on the public site and publicly accessible to everyone as a regular sample.
Right. So Dean has kind of set a precedent now that around major holidays we have to make a sample. Is that what has to happen from now on?
Oh yes. Oh. Halloween's going to be interesting. Maybe it's just dioramas or.
Yeah.
Well, this is one thing I really like about Kenny's assets. I know friends who build lots. Someone built a zombie shooter using Kenny's assets.
Sure.
And they're brilliant. You just throw them in a scene, off you go. Or you could even have a city builder. So we'll do like a Sim City, because all the content is in there. It's just brilliant. And yeah, it looks like Chris is either still talking and he's got notification muted. Oh,
he's probably not talking. I think by now he probably would have noticed that things are dead. Hopefully.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a big deal. We just need to. How GitHub likes to make you up your tiers is to pay for more private repos. It looks like, so we just need to up our monthly payment there to get more private repos. That's just something that we've been trying to avoid, just because why spend more money if we don't need to? But at this point, it sounds like we need to. So, and that's fine. We'll make another private repo and put it up there. For now, and then eventually we'll make it public.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's probably what we do.
I suppose it's one of these things. If someone has an interesting idea, be able to actually share content. Whether or not we still use GitHub for those things, we might use something else. But whatever it is has to be cost effective, because MonoGame being open source, we want to limit what our outgoings are, because we're trying to spend funding on building things rather than hosting things.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the funding is for hosting as well, so that's definitely part of it. We want to make sure that we're doing it, reasonably and not paying like crazy for stuff we don't need. So here's another question: will MonoGame be migrated to .NET 10? Will it be the LTS versions? Yeah, I would expect so. I don't know. Like, my feeling is always that I want to kind of hold back a little bit and not dive into the latest version of .NET the second that it comes out, because I usually find that there's usually very little like compelling new features that we absolutely have to have that are going to change the face of game development. Like, I don't see that happening. Usually it's stuff that we don't really need or care for, or just some semantic sugar on top of the existing language to add something. Maybe a couple new libraries, but usually they're things that are not too critical for game dev. Also, they tend to break things and they tend to change their mind at times, so it seems like holding back a little bit makes sense, but there really is there's no reason why you can't use even the current MonoGame with .NET 10, correct?
Yeah, yeah. MonoGame is, from a client perspective, as a consumable library, it supports 9 and 10. It's supported 9 since that's released, and 10 is no different in that respect. You get a few extra little things you get with .NET 10, and you might get some warnings around your code because they sort of reinforce standards in a few other places, but none of that will affect the operation of MonoGame as a pure .NET library. It works just fine. I mean, the only other issues we've ever had, and this is a testament to why we play it safe from the framework perspective, because we've upgraded dependencies in the past, and sometimes it's fine, and in other ones it comes back as bites us in the ass.
Right.
So the async upgrade is a prime candidate for that, because while yes, models are still import, we can support more formats, great. By the way, it's rotated the models, and that was sort of an unintended side effect, which we're still chasing down with them. But they are also an open source project, so we are finding ways to support and fund them so they can do work which then supports us and then supports ongoing projects. So it's always a continuous cycle with open source. It's not free software, it's software that has passion and deliverables in there, and if your project depends on it, help those projects out, not just MonoGame but also all open source projects.
Right. Yeah, and that's the unintended consequence. Like I think how that asset upgrade went, it's kind of like, oh, we haven't updated this in a long time, maybe we should update it, and that's when everything broke. So it's kind of like this thing, well, maybe we need the latest, maybe you don't, and it's perfectly fine. I think in that case, they actually were trying to address an issue, but like had side effects. But that happens. Dependencies are tricky, and you never know when potentially you might have some other problem from it. So let's see. Another question. One of the main difficulties creating shaders that I noticed is the lack of tools to debug or watch variables in the shader. It's like a black box where you get the expected result or nothing at all. Yeah, I mean, that's the difficulty with shaders, is that the tools are nowhere near as good as what you have in Visual Studio for just debugging C# or C++ or anything else like that. And you'll find this happens a lot, whenever you're developing for a new console, a console that hasn't shipped yet or it's very new, the thing that you can almost always expect is that the tools kind of are bad. Like the debugger doesn't work properly, or it's unstable, or it doesn't give you full information. Like there's a whole world of building tools for tools, where you're building debugger integrations and things like that. And there's a lot of time spent on code debuggers, but a lot less people and a lot less effort spent into things like shader debugging. That said, there are tools out there. I think one of the things that we're limited by a little bit is that since we use an older version of GL at the moment, which I think there's a PR that's updating our GL to a newer version, correct?
Yes.
I saw something the other day. I don't know how realistic that update is, but one of the tools that's out there.
I think from the testing it works well, and it also has an unintended, well, not an unintended, but an interesting side effect.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think is if those you look at the PRs as well, that gives us almost a MonoGame web GL as well, because it's using native OpenGL.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was that's part of a project that we're working on to add, a place we can run Emscription to generate GLSL code from it, but yeah, that's a separate thing. But yeah, that's part of that. So yeah, there are shader debuggers out there. Like one of them is NVIDIA Insight is one of them that's out there, and it depends. Like different ones support different graphics backends. And I think the problem that we ran into was the older version of GL that we had. There wasn't one that supported it well. But if you're using like the DX11 backend, there's different ones that you can use. The one that's built into Visual Studio actually works pretty good. But the shader debugging on all these is there, but a lot of them they're very finicky. That might be something that's actually a pretty good topic for a tutorial potentially, is how to debug your shaders. Like this is how you should do it. Like this, it would be interesting, I think, to a lot of people on how to approach that. And there are different approaches. One approach is the the old school printf style debugging, which is what I end up doing a lot of times when I don't want to potentially fight the shader debugger or try to, because sometimes you spend a lot of time just trying to get the shader debugger to work. And then once you finally get it to work, can I actually debug my shader effectively? So sometimes I just cut to the chase and start debugging it by just taking apart my shader one bit at a time, saying, well, let me return the intermediate value as the color, at this stage in the shader, to kind of get some debugging of sorts in there. So yeah, there's different techniques. So that could be a good tutorial in the future.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because actually in the 2D shader tutorial around about chapter 4, they talk about basically switching the project to a Windows DX and then using RenderDoc to then inspect frames, look at what each segment of the shader is doing, and even when you're building shaders, apply this to see this thing either go wrong or go right, to understand how that effect works, how the entire compilation process is rendered, as it were. So then you can show ways to actually debug them. Or obviously the alternative you can always do is use Shader Toy to play around with how the shader works. But obviously you don't get in a runtime sense of that, but you get a sense of what will work.
Right. No, let's put that down on the list as like another tutorial that we can potentially write, is something about shader debugging, specifically. I don't know, is that covered too much in the 2D shader tutorial?
But there are segments to it, like I said, it shows you about using RenderDoc and breaking out the frames.
Right.
And there's segments all the way through the tutorial, because each section is layered up one on top of the other. So you make a change, this is the effect. You make this change, this is effect. We do this change, it completely breaks the shader, but for a good reason, because you want to then use it this way.
Right.
So it does a lot of the working through, so you can understand when you're building shaders, this is how you're understanding how it all fits together.
Right. Yeah, and RenderDoc's the other tool that you can use to kind of examine your scene. And I think it has a shader debugger. I haven't used it in a long time. But yeah, that's another one. And as we move forward to DX12 and Vulkan, the tools, for shader debugging and just debugging your scene are a little bit better. But that's definitely something we need to make a better effort at, is educating people on how to do that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is where the extra funding and support from MonoGame is going, is addressing those critical things that people want or need to see. It's great showing you a fancy sample, but if you don't understand how that's built or worked, then you're missing a part of the equation, and everyone needs to get on the same level.
Right.
So yes, we're both clicking at the same time. I wish, unfortunately, Dom couldn't be around here. So what we're talking about there is the card sample that Dom's migrated from the old XNA samples. It's got full networking support in it. I think that's still a couple of months away from being finished. There's a lot of documentation that's got to go behind it. The sample itself is fully working, as I understand. But yeah, that is there. There was going to be a bounty for having a networking sample, but we need to get the current tranche of bounties out of the way. So maybe we'll see that in the new year to get out there.
Yeah, and I guess that card sample is actually in pretty good shape. We might want to still refresh some content in there and stuff like that. But yeah, it's not too bad. So I think that's a great sample for that kind of thing.
Well, when you go to compete with the likes of Balatro, which is just taking the world by storm, you need to get good pixel art or good different art in there, and how it all works. So
yeah, we can improve that some. Let's see what else. Can someone catch us up in chat? No, I don't know if anybody can do that. The stream will be up for later. In fact, if you go to YouTube or Twitch, you can see this live stream, and you should be able to go back in time and see what we're talking about. Let's see.
It doesn't look like we're going to get Chris back in this, but bear in mind. Oh, I've got a notification. No, that's not from Chris. What we'll do is we'll either privately stream Chris's session, or we'll probably be the first of the MonoGame spotlights in the new year. We might even bring the date forward so we can get on there. So, fair you not, Chris's content will get out there. I mean, for those who are on the sponsor site, you've already got access to it. But we will certainly get that show out, demonstrating. Because I looked at, it's a real shame he dropped off, because he put a lot of effort into the slides he's done, and he even walks through how some of the tutorial content is built up, and just his thought process in educating people, because it's something also he's really passionate about.
Yeah, Yeah, it's unfortunate, but sometimes the internet drops off. We just
Oh,
have to,
I've,
live with
I've,
that, unfortunately.
I found
Or
one, and yeah, I'm
he's
not sure.
go ahead.
Okay. No. So Bananas is calling me out now, saying that I should do a 24/7 open hours university on a loop.
Well, maybe not
Oh,
that,
that
but
would,
maybe you should do a 24/7 or 24-hour live stream where you just power through things for 24 hours. No sleep, no nothing, just powering through tutorials all
I,
the way
I could, I
through.
could, I could probably do that with one of my tutorial review sections for the 3D tutorial. That people see the method behind my madness of how I ultimately when it comes what the simplest way I can look at it from my author review process when I'm breaking these things down is that for any tutorial, the first and foremost thing you need to do is turn off your brain and go through the tutorial of what's on the page is what goes into your project. Do I understand what this is saying? Without any foreknowledge or without any understanding of what the hell it's talking about, is it giving me the information as I'm doing it so that I can understand it? Which is it's an interesting author technique, but it's
Right.
that it produces the best content. And this is Chris Turtle went through that with the 2D shaded, sorry, not 2D shaded, the beginner 2D tutorial. And this is how we get to that really high level quality of these tutorials and where they're going through to ensure that there's nothing said that has not been explained. So I'm not going
Right.
to start talking about a shaded pipeline and working whether it's a reach or hide profile, but if you're not explained what shaded profiles are. Although I suppose that's a touchy
Right.
subject, isn't it, Tom? Because we've discussed about shaded profiles in a while, because that's one of the things that we really need to modernize in the back end MonoGame.
Yeah. Yep, that's true. So suggestions for so Square Bananas is saying card sample, no online multiplayer for Slime Dungeon coming then. Is there room for that in that game?
We Chris and I discussed this, and we were both
Oh, you did.
horrified about how you could create a multiplayer slime game with a worm flying around. It's almost like a Tron Light Cycles game where you're trying to dodge each other. And
Right.
I
But
think
what you have to do, what you have to do is it just needs to be kind of like a battle royale kind of thing,
Yeah.
where two of you are in the same dungeon until you kill one of them, and then whoever wins goes to the next dungeon up of the winners of that round. So it just gets to be where you get the winners of in each round. Like it pairs up everybody in the first round. After everybody finishes, then it pairs all the winners into one and the losers into another thing. So it kind of builds up into like an ultimate thing. And then you can even have a high level view where you can see everybody's games at the same time.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of those interesting
things. You could go crazy.
Oh, the whole point with the networking sample is it's not just about the networking. The networking almost is, granted, all the complexities are even with like latency and all the other traffic and packets arriving out of order. That stuff's hard, but that problem's mostly solved. Where games really get into struggle with these kind of projects is that how do you have a lobby? How do you do matchmaking?
Yeah.
You're going to Steam, it's got one matchmaking service, but you're going to Xbox, it's got another matchmaking service. And I've even had discussions with Microsoft about finding an open source way to collaboratively build a sort of a transformation layer. So you build your game against a framework that understands all those different systems, and then it's like, I want to go to Steam. Right, there we go. It's connecting to Steam. It's connecting to Xbox. It's connected to PlayStation. And having those things right, because 9 times out of 10, if you're having networking in your game and you're publishing to a console, those certs around matchmaking and logons and authentication, those are the ones that are going to trip you up the most. I mean, the docs, the GDK docs go to a good amount of detail about what you need to do to get matchmaking and authentication working. Sony's do to a degree, but they're almost at odds because the way you handle it is different in the different systems, and especially controller disconnects.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things like that, but like networking and stuff, like basically each platform has, I mean, PC has a multitude of options, but when you get to console, each console has their own kind of networking, not networking, but like kind of lobby room kind of setup. And you can take advantage of those because they're built into the system. They're run by Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, and they're there for free for any developer there to use. And you know that it'll be online for the lifetime of that console at the very least. You know, and it's supported by default and it works. But the problem with those is they don't talk to each other, so you can't do any crossplay, and they're very specific to each platform. So you kind of have to write your own. Like if you want to support multiple platforms, you kind of have to have your own high-level abstraction for everything, so that you can under the hood change out what networking system you're using. You know, or go for something completely different. You know, you can there are third-party libraries like Photon that provide kind of high-level networking, you know, that also work on the consoles. Hey, look who's back.
Look what I found. You unfortunately ran through the entire presentation without noticing, which is...
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, so you went offline and you didn't notice?
I'm on my laptop. I just had the one monitor, so I was just happily chatting away to nobody.
No, that sucks.
I finished, and I looked back.
You,
and I was,
you finished? Say, all right, any questions? What? Well, do you want to keep going? We can keep going.
That's up to you guys.
No, that's good.
I've got nothing going on, so happy to keep rolling.
That's totally fine.
I got time if you feel you want to try. Now you've done your dry run, you've done your practice session.
Yeah.
It's up to you, Chris. Either we can do it now, or we can do it in a dedicated session.
No, go for it. I think if you want to do it.
How far did I get into the presentation?
Jump over to slides and let's take a look where we were at.
Yeah, I think you were on the slide. Yeah, you were on the slide where you were basically saying these are the two tutorials we're going to start looking through. You're about 5 minutes in.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do it. And then at least it's on the recording.
For the audience, for everyone who's here, this is all streamed live. This is what we live for. So if you want to share your screen again.
Yep.
Oh man, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
Did all of the testing ahead of time. I just just disconnected me.
It's
very frustrating.
It's
I just keep Discord minimized to a corner and just like no.
Yeah.
That's okay. So let's switch over.
All right.
Screen sharing. There you go. Me and Tom are going to disappear and mute again, and the floor is yours, Chris.
All right.
Good luck this time.
I'm going to take my phone and open it to the Discord that I've got with you, Simon, so that if I drop off again, please yell at me and I'll see it sooner.
I surely will.
Taking myself off Do Not Disturb, turning my volume all the way up. Okay. All right, so I've been told that I was on this slide. So yeah, we're going to talk about some shader stuff. The tutorial is already available to sponsors, so take a look at it. If you are a sponsor, go to sponsors.monogame.net. If you are not, you'll see a login thing, and you can sign in later. So why make a shader tutorial at all? Well, the answer is because shaders are hard. Well, maybe that's not quite right. They can be confusing, and I would say they can be confusing, especially when there are some things at play. If you're working in a system like MonoGame that has, I don't know, I'll call them technical constraints, like some legacy stuff that's floating around in MonoGame, it can be harder to learn the shaders in an environment like that, where there's just a wide array of things. Like, are you targeting shaders from a long time ago, or are you targeting shaders in a modern stack? Because MonoGame allows you to do both. If you're new to shaders in general, then they're definitely confusing, because there's a lot of lingo, and there's just, like with any new piece of technology, there's a lot of stuff to learn. And if you are new, that's tricky. And I am of the personal opinion that you really need to have a nice development environment set up to really grasp the shaders. And if you don't have that, it's going to make it confusing. Little bugs are going to appear way bigger, and you're just going to get lost. So MonoGame definitely has shaders. They can do a lot. But one thing that MonoGame does not do is give you a super opinionated workflow on how you develop those shaders. So I think that MonoGame, that's just MonoGame's MO on a lot of stuff. It gives a lot of responsibility and therefore power to every developer, and that's great. Unless you don't already know shaders, and then it can be a less great situation. So I want this tutorial to really help folks build some intuition on what a shader is, and when you add one line of code, what's that going to do in your shader program, and also focus on development practices so that you can have a nice workflow environment to develop them in. So I took a little screen grab of the table of contents from the 2D shader tutorial, and it's divided up into two main parts. I would call the first part the workflow part, and the second part the shader part. The workflow part is all about, oh man, brain fart. The workflow part is about the workflow. There are three main components. There's the hot reload section, which is essentially allowing you to work on your shader without actually needing to stop your game and restart your game, because if you're going to do that, you'd incur the cost of having to recompile your code. Even if it was cached, there's going to be some startup time with just the .NET process coming up. And then I would say even worse, if your shader is off on some interesting little part of your game, you have to navigate through your game back to the spot where you have your shader, and it's just a real headache. So being able to hot reload your shader without having to do anything in your game, clutch. The second section is about the common abstractions for shaders. I use the term material, which is a term I think lots of other game engines use to describe sort of you have a shader, yes, but in order to render something pretty, you actually need more than just the shader. It's the kind of collection of larger abstractions for the shader. And finally, a debug UI, which is spiritually very similar to the hot reload, where maybe your shader code isn't changing at all, but you have an input parameter, and you want to be able to change that parameter and see what effect it would have in your shader code. You need to be able to do that without, again, needing to stop your game, recompile your shaders with the new value, or recompile the code that changes the value, for pretty much the same reasons as the hot reload. And then the shaders themselves are also cool. There's a bunch of them, and they cover, I hope, a wide variety of types of things you might do in a shader. So the transition effect is like a large scale screen shader. The color swap shader is like a per sprite kind of swapping out colors dynamically. The sprite vertex shader is especially interesting, especially if you've only worked in 2D environments inside of MonoGame. You might have only used the sprite batch, and even if you've written a shader for use with sprite batch, you may not know that you can also use a vertex shader in that environment. And then there's also some stuff towards the end about lights with normal maps, which is cool. And one of my favorites, adding 2D shadows to those lights. So that's the structure and the philosophy of the tutorial. And now, what is the tutorial like? Well, like I said in the beginning a while ago, I made some little excerpts. So I took content from the tutorial itself. There's a lot of this GIF is from the tutorial, and I just over here and pasted it into the presentation. And then I added little arrows for annotations. So everything you're about to see is directly taken from the shader tutorial. And the first thing we're going to look at is this transition effect, which instead of just jumping from the game menu into the gameplay, there's this little dark pattern that goes over the screen. So how do we do that? We're going to jump right in and say, let's write a shader that just progressively turns the screen red. And you might stop me and say, whoa, how did we get here? And I will remind you that we've actually just skipped all the way to chapter 5. We skipped all of those cool workflow things I was referencing so that the presentation could stay a little snappy. But in general, where we just arrived is that I'm drawing a second sprite on top of the entire game. So this red sprite is literally just a second sprite batch call with this new shader code, just rendering on top of the game menu. So the shader code is here. Hopefully that shows up okay in the presentation. This is not the entire shader, but this is the most salient piece of the shader. And what's happening here is we have this progress variable, and that's being bound to this UI with this little slider that allows us to change the input of that progress variable. And again, if you're wondering how in the world did we do that, I will politely remind you that that is all about the debug UI. So in that chapter, it goes through essentially looking at the shader, automatically finding the parameters in the shader, and then automatically rendering those with C# in immediate mode GUI library, so that you can get this experience where you can just have a little slider and play around with it and see the effect, which in my opinion is super helpful, because here we can see that when the progress value is 0, the screen is black. That's because the progress value is being returned in the red channel of this float 4 thing, which again, this is a mouthful, and especially if you are new to shaders, I'm throwing a lot at you. The shader function here is returning this float 4 value, which has 4 inner values, a red, green, a blue, and an alpha, each of them between 0 and 1. So when progress is all the way at 1, essentially we're returning a float 4 of 1, 0, 0, 1, which is the color red. And this shader is actually running for every single pixel on the screen. So I think the Dungeon Slime resolution is at 1280 by 720. Not that it really matters, but you can imagine that's a lot of pixels. Like that's 1280 times 720's worth of pixels. The shader is running for each and every one of those pixels. And here we're just returning the same value no matter what. So the entire screen is uniformly turning red. But we don't have to return the same value. I took the progress value out, so it vanished from the slider here. And instead, let's return the X position of the pixel. So this float2 UV equals input texture coordinates. That's getting the position of the pixel on the screen. So over here on the left of the screen where X is 0, that means we're returning 0, which winds up being black. And over here on the right side of the screen where X is 1, we're returning the same color from before, which is solid red. And I think the important thing to notice here is that there's this nice smooth gradient, which tells us that the input coordinates of the pixel are nice smoothly interpolated between 0 and 1 across the screen. And we will definitely take advantage of that. Pretty much every shader ever is going to take advantage of this fact. We can do the exact same thing with the Y coordinate here at the top of the screen, Y equals 0, and at the bottom, Y equals 1. Taking that value and sticking it in the green channel instead of the red channel means we get this green gradient. And if you do them both at the same time, so you're providing a red and a green value, then we can sort of see how colors mix. So here at the bottom right of the image where Y is 1 and X is 1, that means we're producing a color that winds up being yellow, or 1, 1, 0, 1. This UV square, by the way, you've probably seen this at some point in your life. If you've been around video games development, you've probably seen this somewhere. It's super common. So far we've only been rendering out like the input space, but we can use logic inside of our shader because the shader is a programming language. So here we're going to create this new value called transitioned and stick it in the blue channel. And it's going to be 1 when our slider is greater than the current X position of the pixel. And this already kind of gives us this transition effect as you adjust the slider. And because this entire thing is just a sprite being drawn on top of the menu, instead of having it control the blue value, you could have it control the alpha value, which again, this makes it even look more like a transition. So you could say we're almost done. We're not almost done. There's a couple of more things to do. And the first one is that this edge that's being created is going from 0 to 1 in a very hard way. And I would like it to smooth out, some artistic control on the smoothness of the transition. So I'm going to introduce a new parameter called edge width, which automatically gets bound to this little slider. You can see as it increases, the smoothness of this cutoff increases almost to the point of non-being, like it's too much when it goes all the way, but that's where the artistic talent comes in. So that's being done with this smooth step function in the transition. Instead of just using a hard like less than symbol, we're using the smooth step function. You might ask yourself, what is that smooth step function if you've never been around shaders? Well, the smooth step is what's called an intrinsic in shader programming. If you're familiar with C# or Python, if you wanted to have a math function like min or max, you'd probably have to import a math library into your code, and then you could use it. Shader programming has a lot of those math functions just available to you immediately. As far as I know, they're always available. Like you don't need to explicitly import them. So smooth step is one of these intrinsics. What does smooth step do? Well, it takes 3 parameters. There's a lower bound, an upper bound, and some number. So that lower bound, imagine that's just this position on this little graph. Here's where the upper bound is, and the number is actually our position along the x-axis. So let's say that our x value is over here on the x-axis. The y-axis is the output. So the output is going to be 1 anytime your input value is greater than your upper bound. And your output is going to be 0 anytime your input value is below your lower bound. And the cool thing about smooth step is that it creates this nice smooth step between the lower and the upper bound. It is, I would say, ubiquitous in a lot of shader programs, so it's good to have a nice intuition for how this works. So that's cool. Check my Discord, make sure I haven't been disconnected. Looks like I'm good, so I'm going to keep going. So there's sort of a change of pace now a bit. We had a transition effect that was following the x value of the screen. So we can switch that up and we can use a different math expression to create a more complex transition pattern. But that means that we need to write more and more complex math expressions to have more and more complex transition patterns, which would not be real scalable. So at this point, I would say it's time to change up how we think about the problem. So just take a step back and think about this math expression before we use that to actually transition the screen out to the 0 alpha to show the menu behind it. We could just render that transition value. And I'm going to stick it in the red, green, and blue channels, which creates this nice grayscale effect. And now you could think of this as being the brighter each pixel, the later it's going to transition. And the darker each pixel, the sooner that individual pixel would transition. And you could, if you wanted to, recreate something very similar to this image in your favorite image editor. I use paint.net. And at that point, you could sort of change the question to say, well, instead of using math to create the gradient in the shader, could we get that same value from the image itself? And the answer is yes. So scribble out that math function, and we just need to find a way to produce the gradient by reading the image data. So there is a second intrinsic called text2d, which allows you to read image data inside your shader. So it takes a couple of parameters. The red text here is a bit rough to read. I apologize for that. But the first parameter is which texture you want to read from, and the second parameter is where you want to read data from. And the output you get back is a color or a float 4 with a red, green, the blue, and alpha value. So for our purposes, we're just going to take the red component. That's shorthand here. .r is for the red value. There's not really a thing to talk about in this presentation, but you should look into texture swizzling or shader swizzling. And yeah, that allows us then to recreate the gradient just by using a texture lookup. And the very neat thing about that is you could use whatever texture you wanted. So here I drew the MonoGame logo inside the gradient texture. And trying to come up with a math expression to capture this image would be near impossible. Not impossible, but way too complicated for our use case here. So it is really neat now that we can just draw something. Or better yet, you can go onto OpenGameArt and take some texture, gradient textures from online. So there's a guy on the internet who goes by Screaming Brain Studios who uploaded a bunch of free textures, and these I pulled into the project. So you can take one of those images and just stick it in here in the shader. So use the texture lookup, and now you get out this gradient value. This might feel like a very long tangent from talking about the transition effect, but when you combine that back with our smooth step transition value, now you can control the transition and you can have it be arbitrarily complex. Like the pattern that you're using can be just whatever is in the image, and there's absolutely no arbitrary math to represent it anymore, which means you've kind of put all of your artistic control in the texture, and we've abstracted it out of the shader, which is pretty cool. And that's pretty much it. So you now have a series of resource textures that control the way the animation is going to look. You have a little snippet of shader code, And then it's not part of this tutorial, or I'm sorry, it's not part of this presentation, but it is very much part of the tutorial. It's the C# code you need to drive this stuff in the background. So in the GIF here, when I change between scenes, like when I click the start button, you can see that the sliders are moving automatically. That's just being driven by some C# stuff. So yeah, that's the transition effect. Super fast run through of it. There's a lot more detail in the tutorial, but huzzah, that is now done. So let's move on to the next thing, which would be 2D shadows. So it's a little hard to see in the GIF. I apologize for that, but as the slime goes by one of these lights, you can see that there's like a cool little shadow. This is a heavily abbreviated version of how to do the shadow effects. We're really only going to focus on drawing the very primitive shadow itself. And I just wanted to call out that we're starting here where like this looks super different than what we were just showing with the transition effect. And that's because, again, we're skipping a ton of chapters. So we skipped over this color swap effect, which is causing the whole image to look like this purple thing because we're using a purple color palette instead of the default. We skipped over adding the light in general, which is causing this gradient to be here. And we also skipped over the sprite vertex thing, which is just cool. And we find ourselves taking an excerpt from the final chapter. So I know that like mentally it might be weird because you're looking at something that is very different than what the current Dungeon Slime project looks like, but it's because we're all the way at the end of the tutorial. So our goal here is to draw a shadow volume behind the slime character. And I visualized this little pink dot, that's where the light is. And this shadow volume is what we want to end up drawing. But how? The answer would be to use trickery, which is how you do a lot of things in computer graphics. It's all about illusion. And MonoGame, does it have the trickery? It does have sprite batch. Sprite batch is super powerful in its own right. It can do quite a lot of interesting things. And one nice thing about MonoGame being open source is that you can go understand how it's doing those things. With very little effort, you can actually copy paste sprite batch and get in there and actually muck with it. I didn't do that in the tutorial, so everything is using vanilla sprite batch right out of the box. But just here in this presentation, I just want to say out loud, sprite batch is great. If you are willing to sort of crack open the hinge, it can be a great jumping off point to do a whole lot of additional 2D effects. But the first thing to notice is that this magenta shape that we want to render is not rectangular. And sprite batch draws quadrilaterals. 99% of the time, sprite batch is used to draw rectangles. And for those who may have forgotten the distinction, a rectangle is a quadrilateral, but not all quadrilaterals are rectangles. So a quad is just any shape with exactly 4 sides. And the rectangle is like, oh, it has to have 90 degrees between all the corners. So sprite batch most of the time just draws rectangles because by default, I don't think a lot of common use cases override the vertex shader. And I'm now like, what is a vertex shader that I'm referencing? There's a whole chapter about it, just a shout out. But very, very, very basically, the vertex shader allows you to take a sprite that has 4 corners and adjust the corners. So you could adjust the positions of the corners. There's actually other data that's stored in each corner, like what color should we tint the pixels around this corner, for example. But in this use case, we're just going to be adjusting the positions of the corners. And that is pretty cool because it allows you to take your sprite and morph it in ways that are very helpful. And we are definitely going to take advantage of that fact. So just to really drive this home, each corner is being just mapped to a new position, and it's the vertex shader that is doing that mapping. Well, that's helpful to know, but this is still not even a quadrilateral. The insight there is that, well, I'm sort of patching together different parts of the tutorial here, but this is actually 3 separate quads stitched together. So let's just focus on rendering one of the quads. And the way that we're going to do that, and this is the introduction of the trickery. We're going to use trickery to render this quad. We're actually just going to use a single pixel, and we're going to put that pixel in one of the corners, in one of the quarters of the quadrilateral. And the thing to note here is that the pixel is literally just like a 1x1 texture asset. You don't even need to have content for this. You can generate it at runtime, and then you use that as the image that you're using in your sprite batch call. And we can label the 4 corners of that pixel. If you look at your keyboard, you'll see that these are nicely laid out. And we're also going to label the 4 corners of the quadrilateral that we want to draw. Using uppercase A and uppercase B on the left side of the quad, and lowercase a and lowercase b on the right side. You'll see why at the end, but it's very much the case that this position is related to this position, and lowercase b is related to uppercase b, which I probably could have picked better names, but that's like a classic thing in programming, right? So what we're looking for is some function to convert the corners of our pixel to the corners of our quadrilateral. And if we can represent that in a vertex shader, then we will have been able to draw this wacky shape just using sprite batch. Oh, and by the way, we also know L, which I'm dubbing as the position of the light, right? As you move the light around, that's absolutely going to affect the way your shadow is. Like where your shadow is depends on where the light is, kind of by definition. So to get us started here, my phone went to sleep. Let me make sure that I haven't been disconnected. Great, not seeing anything. So where we start is kind of cheating. We might as well just render our pixel in one of the corners. So let's just say that we're going to put our starting position at uppercase A. And now we already know where uppercase A is. So we're done with 1/4 of the problem. So now it's time to move on and figure out where uppercase B is. And we're going to zoom in a bit here. So bear with me here. This is going to sound really obvious or like a non-statement. But if you know where A is, and you knew the vector from A to B, then it wouldn't be a long shot to figure out where B is, because you could just say B is like A plus that vector. We don't happen to know that vector, but if we did, we could call it A to B. And then we could say, great, B is your starting position plus that vector. So that's cool, with like sort of an asterisk of we don't actually know what that vector is, but if we did, we would have it figured out. So how are we going to figure out that vector? Well, sprite batch on its own doesn't let you control a ton of information about the draw that you're passing. So like we're putting a pixel at some position, but what it does let you do is set the color of your sprite. So that's something that we can utilize here. The color is just 32 bytes of data. And if you think about this imaginary vector, B to A, or A to B rather, it's just a vector. So it's an X and a Y value. Well, a color has 4 values, but more importantly, it's just bytes. It's just byte capacity. So you could take the X, whatever the X value of this vector happens to be, and you could slide it into the 16 bytes that make up the red and green channel of your color. And you could do the same thing for the Y value. You could just slide that into the 16 bytes that make up the blue and alpha value. And what that will generate for you is a valid color, but it will probably be a ridiculous color that doesn't mean anything visually to the human eye. What it means is now it's an encoded vector. So actually, when we draw this pixel, I picked this random purple color, but it's just some random color is essentially what would be sent over to the graphics card when it actually goes to draw this thing. But what's important is that it's the encoding of this vector. So in the shader, you can take the color and you can do the opposite process here, where you say, well, I'm going to look at the red and the green value and just take their bytes as bytes and just treat it as one number X, essentially. And so now you've encoded the vector. So now we do know A to B, and that is a valid thing to do. So now it's time to move on and find the next position, lowercase a. And like I said, it's related very much to uppercase A. If you think about the light position, just sort of the way, right, like light sends out rays of lights. So there's a ray of light going here that's going to pass through A, and we're going to find lowercase a along this ray somewhere. So you could take the normal vector going towards uppercase A. The notation here is take this vector and take the normal of it. That's what the double bars are. There's no slide, unfortunately, that talks about like the fundamentals of vector math. So if that's something folks want to talk about, happy to chat about that. It occurs to me now, I'm just kind of putting that in here without any pretext. But essentially, we get this direction that the light is traveling. The other piece of information we need to know is how far away we want lowercase a to be. And we can just kind of arbitrarily define that as some distance d. In the tutorial itself, this value is essentially just the screen width. It just needs to be large enough that it covers the screen, essentially. So we now have these two values, which means we can compute the position of A by starting at S, which is this position, and moving along this direction, which is this direction, by some distance, which is this distance between them. And that means we get to know where lowercase a is. And you can do the exact same trick for lowercase b. It's just you use uppercase B as the starting point instead. You do the exact same thing. You figure out the direction going from the light to B, and you use the same distance value, and bada boom, Bob's your uncle. You now know all of the corner positions of the light. So I think what's fascinating about this is knowing your starting position, essentially, like where you put the pixel. We just happen to put that in one of the corners. We know the light position, and we've encoded this magic vector into the color. And from those three pieces of information, essentially, you can derive all of the other coordinates that you need to render that quadrilateral. So I stuck the shader code in here. I don't expect anyone to read this and understand what this means in this presentation. The reason it's here is just to sort of intuit. It's not that much code. A lot of this is just understanding the math behind what's happening. And it's kind of fascinating that you can pull off this trick using a vertex shader. And so now this darker section over here that I've outlined in red, this is actually a sprite in a way, right? It's using sprite batch to draw this thing. And like we know, it's actually just putting a pixel here, setting the color of that pixel to represent this magic vector. And that's what's in your C#. And the shader is taking care of the rest to project that little pixel actually into this much larger shape. So that I would say is definitely the trickery involved here, which is pretty cool. That's kind of all we have time for the shadow part. If you zoom in on the actual table of contents of just that chapter, there's quite a lot more. We really only talked about the vertex shader theory and a little bit of the implementation or bit packing, but there's a lot of other stuff to get it to look nice and perform nicely. And that's all covered in there. Also, I ran out of time when I was making the presentation, and I figured that's probably enough. Probably at the point where I'm almost boring people. So
Oh no, it's happened again. I guess he was done with you're muted there. I guess he's done with the presentation, so he quit. Fun. Let's see if I guess you're notifying him, Simon, of the disconnection. But he got through almost all of it.
What? Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
No, that's weird. Okay. Yeah, I'm messaging to let him know he's going to check his Discord.
Yeah, I don't think he meant to eject as soon as he got done with the presentation, but I think he was done. I think so. He said it was about 25 minutes, and that's where we're about at.
Yeah, I'm there. Just let him know. See if he'll come back for Q&A.
No, that presentation is great. It shows how detailed he went into that shader tutorial, and it really does cover a lot of stuff. So that's going to be great for people to have access to. Oh, looks like he's on his way back in. He wasn't really done.
Yeah, he's there.
No,
so that was at the end, right?
I think so. Did you see the little become a sponsor ad?
I didn't see the become a sponsor ad, but
all right.
If that was it,
Yeah, it's probably not worth sharing the screen again. But if it got to the end of the shadow section, then that's pretty much it. The last couple slides, I will just say them out loud.
Yeah.
Please become a MonoGame sponsor because you can get access. And I was also going to throw a big thank you over to Chris Whitley, who wrote the original tutorial that the entire 2D is based on. So wouldn't exist without all the effort he put in. And another big thank you to Simon for being the editor A lot of feedback.
That's not what you said where I was reviewing it.
Well, in hindsight,
Yeah.
there's no way the shader tutorial would exist at the quality level that it is today without Simon. So big thank you, and that was it. So
No, that was great. I'm glad to have seen that. It shows how much effort you put into that tutorial, and I think people are going to love it.
Yep, donate, get early access, and go through it. And Tom, I learned things from reading that shader, and
Oh yeah,
I've been hard pressed to learn shaders over my game career because they're just the one black magic art that I've never got my head around, other than the fact that knowing that you're doing something to every single pixel on the screen, every single frame. And yeah, this tutorial was the one that finally got home of actually working out how these things put together and do things.
Yep, it's great. So that's available for sponsors now, and at some point it'll be available to everybody else. We're not sure exactly when, but stay tuned. We'll talk about that more in the next couple of open hours. Anything else that we didn't cover for today?
I think that was it. I don't know if you can see the chat on there, Chris, but yeah, most things are there, or basically everyone's just big congrats, fantastic news, and all this. We'll give it a minute to see, is anyone getting actual questions about it or getting access to the content? Or, those sponsors who've got access now have probably been going through it already. We're waiting feedback from them as well. So,
yeah, any questions?
No, I think everyone's just stunned, or either that, or they've actually left the presentation now and they're actually on the site and going through the tutorial already.
Yeah, well, that's possible as well.
There was one thing I think I threw it up earlier, is that it was actually back to the networking question. Where is he? Where is it? It was good old Chris Wiley had shared. Okay. It wasn't that one. That was just something he threw in.
Right.
Where was he? He was talking about networking. I've lost it.
That's all right.
No. Well, basically, what Chris was saying, he has actually already done a battle royale version of the Snake game, but it's not something he published.
He sent me a link to it.
Yeah. So that might be something to reach back to Chris, especially if there's a lot of interest in that area, and we can work out some arrangement to try and get that into tutorial form, maybe.
Networking is a whole other realm of thing. There's a lot of things that you need to know to be able to build a game, and that's just another whole section. And a good tutorial would be great for that. Yeah,
we're always hungry for more content. And again, if anyone's any suggestions about what things they would like to see or what they would like to do, then by all means, there's a suggestion box on the Discord. Just throw the details into there. Let's see. Actually, no. As other Chris will notice that you do call out the fact that you set the bar high, and then unfortunately, Chris Mark II has decided to raise the bar even higher, especially with the animated logo.
Yep.
Yeah, 0. The answer is 0.
Yeah, because awesome. I think what early on in the tutorial says, put this code in here and you will pause the game. I think the only thing I regularly curse Chris 1, Chris 1 and Chris 2. The only thing I regularly curse Chris 1 is while the music is good for the sample, listening to that on an endless loop for several hours as you're going through the tutorial would drive you insane.
That is true. Yes, I did have to issue a small utterance for the music choice, but I wouldn't say that's a curse.
No, it was good for the sample, and it was happily donated to the sample by another artist, and it is great. But yes, Chris 1 is Aristotle, and it is good, but it is brilliant as well. In fact, you talk through this in the tutorial, having a pause of the section where you want to play with that shader, having the hot reload, automatically rebuilding it, and either getting the effect you wanted or suddenly getting a black screen because you broke something or did a calculation wrong.
Yep.
Was also essential.
Cool. Well,
Okay.
I think that's it for this week or for this
Yeah,
month.
we've ran over, but for good reasons.
Yep.
We got to talk about more stuff and got more questions in there. So,
and then I guess Friday we have a, well, that's why, yeah. The that on Friday we're gonna do another Code Time stream. I think I might go over the work that Dom was doing on a new storage API based on the old XNA storage API, but modified so that it works better for console. So that you can, like, this has been an ongoing pain in the console world, is like, because each console has a different way that they want to save things, and having a good API for doing it, you just can't just save to C:, whatever. You have to have a good path for that and have a good wrapper for that. So that's what the idea here is to provide a good API for writing save data for console and across platforms, including mobile. So I was going to go over that PR and do some cleanup work on it and see if we can get it to a point where it's actually committable, so we can get it in the either 3.8.5 or 3.8.6 release.
Yeah, I think the old XNA title container and storage container, I think that was heartily missed, because the pain I have with that, Tom, is Android. Mm-hmm. Trying to do file save on Android and turn to serialization, because you have to know specifically where it's going to be and what it's going to do and how you're going to read it, and if it's accessible, and having it on the managed layer that handles that for you, and then it's not something I need to worry about when I get to the next platform, because you're working with a container that handles all the files. The system handles where that container is, all the files are stored, how they're serialized, how you then read them back to, whether or not you're doing asset packs and stuff like that, or whether you're doing to a console using their version of what is storage area. I think the other area we really hit on that was with UWP, which has its own little flavor or way of doing containers for storage, which can or cannot work depending if you're online or offline.
Yeah.
No, it's a nightmare.
And save data is very important. I was working, on another engine the other day, another tech stack, and they, for whatever reason, they set it up where save data, like it was saving, logging and, shader cache files and things like that to the save data. So it ended up in the save data in a console game. It's like, that shouldn't be there. It's just basically a bad design for that, where it's designed it where, oh, well, there's a user area where you can write user files. And it's like, save data is not just user files. It's more complicated than that. And that's why you really want an API that's very separate for save data, that's separate from everything else. If you have logging, great, but that shouldn't go into your save data. If you're writing cache files for speeding up your shader loading and things like that, that should be written somewhere else, not into your save data. It's a very specific API. So it's important to have something like that. And we're trying to resuscitate the old API that didn't work for consoles into something that would.
Yeah, which is, again, all part of this thing of building these abstraction layers in a managed way using C#, that then also, if it needs it as a native backend that you as a C# developer never even see, it just does it all for you. My old adage of the swan gracefully going across the lake is your C# managed layer, but yet the feet are furiously flying underneath, which is the native layer, and doing all the stuff for you. That is hard. I think you showed it last week in the stream of how you're managing the transfer of data in byte form from both from the C# managed layer down to the C++ layer, and having to manage all the memory and all that stuff. So it's always
there's a lot of stuff there.
Yep. Okay, cool. So I think we're pretty much we're already way over, but this is by far our longest stream, but for a good reason, Chris. So don't worry about it. And if you're doing more games and other stuff, Chris will likely love to have you back in the new Spotlight show we're starting in the new year. So, or if you suddenly find a way to actually then start building some more content.
Cool.
We're here to showcase it.
Yep. Thanks for presenting today, Chris.
Thanks, everybody.
All
right, everyone, and that's been your MonoGame open house for December. Happy holidays, happy new year, and we shall catch you in 2026.
Bye.